I'll never forget when someone I worked with said to me very calmly, "I don't really need anyone." There was no anger in their voice, no defensiveness. Their body looked settled, capable, self-contained, and yet something in the room felt absent. Not lonely, not distressed, just quietly cut off, as if their nervous system had learned a long time ago that reaching out wasn't worth the risk. And they looked at me and said, "That's healthy, right?" If you recognise this, if closeness feels uncomfortable, if relying on others feels risky, or if independence feels essential rather than optional, this may not be a personality trait or an attachment style. It may be procedural survival signal. If you want to understand and practice the skills that address these patterns at the level they were learned, not just talked about, you'll find them at PsycheVita.com and in the PsycheVita app. I'm Dr. Tony Weston, psychotherapist, executive coach and award-winning researcher. For over 2 decades I've worked with people who function well in the world, often at high levels, and who struggle most not with performance but with closeness. In this episode I want to show you 3 things. What attachment avoidance is really protecting, how it forms before thought or choice, and what growth looks like without forcing dependence. What the signal is really saying. This is Skill 1, 8.2, Somatic Attunement. Attachment avoidance isn't the absence of need. It's the management of need. From a developmental perspective, this pattern forms very early, often before language, before conscious memory, and before the body could organise behaviour such as protest, withdrawal, or demand. A baby's nervous system is not designed to self-regulate. It requires an adult to insert themselves as regulator through attuned presence, rhythm, touch, tone of voice, and emotional availability. Over time, regulation becomes shared. Eventually, it can be internalized. But when this doesn't happen through emotional absence, inconsistency, overwhelm, or intergenerational trauma, the nervous system adapts, not by reaching harder, but by standing down the reach itself. This is not a choice, it is not a belief, it is a procedural solution to repeated non-response. Somatically, this often shows up as reduced chest movement, shallow or restricted breathing, low interoceptive awareness, discomfort when care or attention arrives. The body learned, I survive better when I don't need. The mechanism. Skill 2, 4.1, Somatic Attunement. Received, not given. Here's the mechanism that often goes unrecognised. When early bids for attunement are not met, the nervous system doesn't just experience disappointment, it lowers expectation. Over time, the system learns, don't expect responsiveness, don't register absence, don't orient outward. This is why reassurance doesn't help, why insight doesn't soften it, why being understood can still feel intrusive. Importantly, this isn't emotional coldness, it's protection from repeated non-response. In my own clinical research conducted before PsycheVita existed, I tracked belief patterns using measures developed by Aaron Beck. One of the strongest shifts I observed was in what the literature calls the schizoid belief pattern. Beliefs organised around emotional distance and self-sufficiency. Across 35 clients, these beliefs reduced substantially over an average of 17 sessions, with a large effect size. What mattered wasn't encouragement to connect. It was working at the level where the nervous system no longer needed distance to stay safe. PsycheVita was built later to make that kind of developmental work more accessible and repeatable, not to replace therapy, but to support capacity growth between sessions. The Growth Edge, Skill 3, 3.4 Healthy Self-Worth. Growth here does not begin with asking for more closeness. It begins with something far more subtle, tolerating being valued without earning it. For many people with attachment avoidance, self-worth became conditional on self-sufficiency. I'm okay if I don't need. I'm safe if I manage alone. So closeness doesn't feel relieving, it feels destabilizing. This pattern is common in people who were described as good babies who never cried, easy children who didn't make a fuss, the one who didn't add to the load. In adulthood, it often appears in senior professionals, leaders, therapists, people whose competence masks an absence of felt support. The developmental task is not dependency. It is allowing worth to exist prior to performance and connection to be possible without collapse or obligation. That's why this work cannot be rushed, persuaded, or coached into existence. It has to be grown. Attachment avoidance is learned before cognition, before behaviour, and often before memory, which is why it cannot be argued away and why it must be met at the level of nervous system safety. This isn't about becoming more emotional. It isn't about needing more people. It's about a nervous system learning, often for the first time, that reaching does not automatically lead to disappointment, overwhelm, or disappearance. That learning happens slowly, relationally, and with containment. If you've lived a life where needing others didn't feel safe, independence may have been your greatest strength. This work isn't about undoing that strength. It's about allowing connection to become an option, not a threat. If you'd like to practice these skills in a structured, developmentally grounded way, you'll find them at PsycheVita.com and on the app. And if you want the broader roadmap, my book, Transform Your Life, explores how these capacities develop over time. You're not broken. You adapted, and now you're learning what else is possible.